All right. So where do you want to start, Wombat?
Welcome to the stream, everyone. I'm the Wombat of Doom, and sorry we had some problems with our audio from me. So today we're going to be talking about Zelda. We've been talking about Zelda, but since we had technical difficulties, which is per usual with this talk show, we are going to restart. The topic is what's our favorite Zelda and why. We'll get started with Kirby. Kirby, what's your favorite Zelda?
So my head wasn't in the right position this time because I had this really amazing reveal last time. You guys missed it. As you can see in the background back there, my Majora's Mask on the wall. Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game.
There, I made a reveal with the title underneath you, so you're good.
Oh, thank you, thank you. In a broad sense, why it's my favorite is because when I played it as a kid, it was the first game I experienced where I felt pretty immersed in the game due to the strict time schedule in the game. Everyone had their own agenda. You know where people would be on what day, on what time, what they'd be doing. And as another point, they had a lot of side quests in that game that I didn't experience. And in my opinion, that were these side quests were better than a lot of the other Zelda side quests that exist. So, in summary, that's my favorite Zelda game. Kind of wrap up everything again. All right, Trell.
I would say that Breath of the Wild is just because it is reinventing Zelda for something that can live on. I think a lot of times people, I think I hear that people are getting burned out on Zelda sometimes. I feel like with OOT it was when we were discussing this earlier, but with OOT it was like the mold that was set, and then all of a sudden everything was trying to fit into that mold from there on out. Not saying that those Zelda games weren't good. I loved OT. I loved Majora's Mask and all the sequels that followed it. They were so good. But I feel like with Breath of the Wild, it was venturing out into something new. It's on a handheld, if you want to technically say that, and it's like I don't know, the storyline, everything, it just came together for me. It was I don't know, so good.
I mean, all three of our games are kind of on handheld. Mine's Ocarina of Time, because they made remakes of both of those too, and
True.
the remakes are actually pretty good. Especially Majora's Mask. The remake they did of that was like really cool. But Ocarina of Time's mine. And honestly, I feel like it's the best game because it like does a lot of the all of the elements well rather than specific ones. Um, like storyline, the dungeons, the variety, the items, and a lot of it sets the precedent for future games like Trell was saying with Breath of the Wild. Um, and even Majora's Mask in certain elements. So I felt like that it was the best game. And the timeline that we were discussing just a little bit ago before the stream really started was we I made a claim that perhaps Nintendo's favorite Zelda is Ocarina of Time because it is where the timeline splits. So
I would
they at
agree with
least
that.
feel that it's an important one, a really important one. And
I,
it's
I
their
would agree
first
that
3D.
Nintendo loves it.
It's pretty impressive though with Ocarina of Time that it's their first 3D Zelda game, and they just nailed it. Like there is a little bit of cut content that they never ended up getting to use for Ocarina of Time. I don't know if you guys knew that or not,
No, I
but
didn't.
it wasn't enough to like really affect the game.
Hmm.
So
Interesting. I never knew about the Ice Arrows location until recently, until I played your SMM
I still can't
levels of
believe you didn't
it.
know about that.
No, I was like, "There's unknown content to me in OOT." Oh my god.
shame,
Oh.
shame. All right, so I guess the first topic we'll talk about with our respective games to defend our titles is we're gonna talk about. I guess should we do dungeons first?
That's fine. They're a pretty core concept in Zelda games, so
Sure.
I think it's fair to start there. We can.
Yeah. You want me to go?
So yeah. Admittedly, I will say that there are not as many dungeons in Majora's Mask as there are Ocarina of Time, and depending on what you consider dungeons in Breath of the Wild, there's either an equivalent amount or there's less. So in terms of the quantity, the dungeons aren't amazing compared to the other two games. However, I do think the dungeons were done very well in Majora's Mask. I'm going to leak a little bit into gameplay, but I'll save my main arguments for this later. But I think one of the reasons I think they were done so well is due to the mask quality of the mask component of the game, where you can change into these different races. And I think it allowed them to do a lot of unique puzzles that they couldn't do with just Link, as because you change species pretty much. I also think I enjoyed every boss fight in Majora's Mask, where I can say the same for most of the bosses in Ocarina of Time, save maybe one or two. In Breath of the Wild, I didn't really like any of the bosses, to be honest. But with that said, I think while in quantity it may not win out. I think the quality of the dungeons are really well, and the puzzle solving is really unique in Majora's Mask.
Good points.
Yeah, I would have to say if I had one complaint about the about Breath of the Wild, it probably would be on the dungeons. To be fairly honst,
There's a
and that
reason
would
I
be
started with the dungeons trail.
yeah. I was like, ooh man, hitting the weak point actually. So with Breath of the Wild, that was probably the one thing that I didn't get satisfaction of. And I think you were talking about this earlier with how OOT was the most Zelda-y type Zelda out there. And I think it's because it was like the one that kind of set the precedence that have it was very this I don't know, the storyline just seemed very much like the hero riding off to save the princess in the world type thing, and you had to go from like all the elements, right? You went from like the forest to fire to water and etc. And that just seems so like I don't know, just hitting all like these like elements, I guess, just seems so satisfactory. Where in Breath of the Wild, you had, I guess, elements. There was like the wind and the fire and the sea and the sand, right? But it just didn't they weren't long. They were short. They and then I guess to account for that, you had a lot of the shrines. So even though it wasn't satisfactory in the sense of like the same way I got satisfaction out of probably like Majora's or OOT, the mechanics, and this is where I'm gonna probably be like Kirby and bleed into the gameplay. The mechanics of those puzzles and the boss fights I think made up for it in some aspects, but in the sense of like maybe fulfilling what you expected from a Zelda game in childhood memory, it wasn't hitting nostalgia, I guess, on the checklist. But I think the mechanics and everything else was just top tier.
So, uh, so let me before I move on to my dungeons, I want to say something about because it's really interesting. Majora's Mask and Breath of the Wild are both on the table because there's some clear connection in terms of um, at least in the dungeon elements between Breath of the Wild and Majora's Mask because there's four directional dungeons basically. Um, Except I would consider Breath of the Wild to have six dungeons if you include the DLC. I
Yeah,
don't
that's what I meant.
I don't know if you played the DLC yet, Trell.
Some of it I haven't finished
I
it.
haven't finished it either. I haven't gotten to this dungeon, but it's a big one, and apparently helps. And I would also consider Hyrule Castle to be a dungeon in itself.
Okay.
Um, Not it's more of an open dungeon, but it's actually the most dungiest dungeon in Breath of the Wild, I feel.
The Dungeous Dungeon.
Dungeous dungeon.
As in like it's a clear structure that you're exploring. There's enemies, you find stuff, you get to a boss at the top. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, it's very open and you can skip most of it in true Zelda fashion, but there's a lot of mechanics and many bosses and all kinds of stuff in there too. So, and it's where you can find the Hyrule Shield. So that's really cool.
Oh,
Um, but ultimately speaking, I don't know if I can agree with you about the physics of the game being uh, best utilized in the Breath of the Wild dungeons. I feel like they were utilized some, and what they did utilize were cool, but I don't think that they. I think they tested it out and then used a lot of the stuff that they were gonna use in like some of the shrines, like the puzzle shrines. Like they used some of their best puzzles in the shrines rather than in the temple. So like the temples all had like overarching like do this and then do this like a whole bunch more times. And then the bosses did have some gimmicks to them, which was cool. Um, but they all looked the same and were very similar in certain ways. Um, with one exception, like the camel. The camel one was like really different.
that's true. I think and that probably with the hitting like the nostalgia thing, like when you went into the different OOT temples, you had like you were fighting something that represented the element that you were in. So like the big, I can't remember the names. Don't hurt me for trying to scramble my brain on that. But like the big dragon and the fire one, uh,
Volvagia.
yeah, Vlogia, and then Bongo Bongo, and so
Oh,
it was just, you didn't in Breath of the Wild, they probably lacked on that, and I'll admit to that. The bosses did seem very similar in looks. I mean, just giving them like, I don't know, even like a red color or a blue color would have been probably cooler than just making look the same.
You're right though. I
Like
mean,
like if you think about it, like Majora's Mask, all the bosses were like mask-based bosses that all had like they were connected in some way. They all were connected to that temple, and they didn't necessarily follow that element, but the whole temple was oriented around one item, the mask for that temple, right?
yeah.
Um, but they did it so much better and utilized the puzzles so much better toward those things in so many different ways. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, everything was very much more spread out, so it felt more broken up. And that's kind of what really bothered me about the dungeons within Breath of the Wild. Even if it was a cool game, like the dungeons really fell flat for me because of that.
Right.
Because Breath of the Wild is supposed to have learned from every Zelda game. Like they took elements of every Zelda game, just like the Switch took elements of every system that Nintendo's made. Uh, so I was like, this is like
Coup
the
de
creme de
grace,
menthe, the
yeah,
creme de
whatever.
whatever, the cream of the crop here. And this was something where they're like, no, we're gonna do something new here. We're not gonna,
Right.
yeah.
See,
So
I would argue against that in the sense that uh uh what's a good way to put it? Like in Dark Souls, we always bring everything to Dark Souls,
sure.
right? So like in Dark Souls, when you find like that one item with that one particular use for that one area or something like that, and it feels like that sometimes in Zelda games. I don't think it was less of that in OOT and Majora's. It was completely that in Skyward Sword. But it was like you have like this item, you got to go use it for this dungeon, and then you're kind of done with that item, and you're like, well, you might have like a one little cute feature, or you got to go get the scarecrow or something like that later, and you're like, oh, I'm glad I have this item, but
Twilight
you never
Princess did
really
that
use it
too, yeah.
again.
Like
The
with
what?
the Twilight Princess did that too with the spinner,
And the Rob
especially.
Dominion.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. So I think in that sense they were trying to correct it and be like, you know what, you can do this. You can do this in many different ways. You choose how to do this. We're not going to say you're locked down to needing this item to do this fight. And like I remember when I did
But
the
you did need the items to do X fight.
not always. There were some ways to get around it. Like
Yeah, true. It would take a lot longer.
right, and in pure Trelly way, I think I did almost every boss fight in not the proper way.
Okay.
So
But there is one like the lightning boss, the camel boss. You can't beat it any other way. I couldn't figure it out at first, and like but
I was able to fight the what was it, the gecko boss or whatever, the lizard boss. And that's a bad thing too. You don't know the names of the bosses in Breath of the Wild because they weren't memorable, right?
Well, they're just like Thunder Blight, Water Blight, Fire
Right.
Blight.
Exactly.
Thunderblight.
If you,
Those are
the way
Pokemon.
the way I beat the one in the
Ganon
gecko
had the Thunderstone.
was not from like from actually doing it the required way, because it seemed like it was untouchable and I couldn't deal damage to it. So actually just using that little like snap finger lightning bolt thing rendered it like defenseless, and I was able to go up and just whoop up on it. So I was like, okay, that worked. I'm rolling with it. So
Mhm. Cool.
it wasn't until later I found out the way that you were supposed to do it. I was like, oh, but that's what I feel like. That'd be my argument to that, is that while that is cool, and I think OOT had the right balance of it, Breath of the Wild was like, let's eliminate that and try something new, and I thought that
Okay.
it worked for me.
So let's get to Ocarina of Time dungeons. There's 5 child dungeons and 5 adult dungeons. So that right there, that's what 6 more dungeons than both of you guys.
Hey,
and and I can't think of one that I hated. Um, Even the water temple, which gets a lot of
Water
flack.
temple.
I thought it
God.
was really a great temple. Like it's always historically one of the hardest, but like it still was really well designed, and like that people talk about it that much. Um, like I don't know, like the only one that I hear gets a lot of flack is as not really even a real dungeon is bottom of the well.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't even know that was a dungeon. What, that counts? There's no
That
boss.
counts.
yep,
That counts
yeah,
as a
there
dungeon.
is Dead Hand.
Okay. Oh, okay.
The only
Fair.
one that doesn't really have a boss is Spirit Temple Young Link, because Spirit Temple
Yeah.
is 2 dungeons in one, or one. It would be 9 if you count Spirit Temple as the same dungeon, which
Right.
I would accept. But the boss there is the big axe guy. The what's his name? I forget.
Was it Iron
Yeah.
Fist or
Yeah, Iron Knuckle. Thank you.
Iron Knuckle? Yep.
Got him.
um, but yeah, all in all, like each of the 5 elements was represented both in the child Link and in the adult Link, and each one had like really consistent themes, very varying themes, and
Mhm.
the puzzles were satisfying. Like when you solved them, when you figured it out, they were challenging and when you but fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, with the exception of maybe Water Temple being a little unfair with the amount of keys and how distributed they were, and if you didn't realize that you need to just basically circle the dungeon twice, once with the long shot and once without, then you're gonna be a little lost for a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, that with the combination of that and then the some we're gonna bleed into the game mechanics, but some of the item selection in Ocarina of Time was granted a little frustrating in terms of having to go into your menu to switch out, which they fixed in the remake. Like
Okay.
uh,
Oh, really?
yeah, iron boots became an item in your C stick
Ooh,
instead.
thank
Oh,
God.
I've seen that. Yeah, that's right.
So that was a good call there. Because like pausing every like 5 seconds to like turn on or off your boots kind of sucked. But like it
It's
didn't
annoying.
bother me, but like I know it was an annoyance for a lot of people.
It kind of breaks up the gameplay and
Yeah,
brings you out of that false sense of reality that you go to games for.
right. And I mean, game mechanics wise, Ocarina of Time definitely does have some things to be desired, but it's also I think because it was the first 3D game, I give it that um, I give it some leeway because it was the first 3D, which may be one of the reasons why it's easy to make Ocarina of Time my favorite game because like I give it leeway in a certain things because it has the excuse of being the first 3D Zelda. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas Breath of the Wild, as you were saying, was like, and I guess we can go in the gameplay mechanics now
Yeah.
as the next one. Breath of the Wild really improved upon that quite a lot. In some ways. In some ways, I wasn't sure about their decisions, but I still liked it. But before we get into that, go ahead, Kirby. What are your thoughts about mechanics and items?
So I kind of talked about the mask feature since that's a big part of the game, being
It's a
Majora's.
big part of the game, and
It's arguably, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
like one of the things that Trell was mentioning about one-shot items, Majora's Mask is like the game for that.
I
Because
would
like
argue the sword actually, but go ahead.
out of the 20 masks, or 24 masks, sorry, there's like at least 16 of them are one-shot uses.
Yeah, to complete side quests, which is fine.
Just
It's
to get a
it's not
heart piece or a bottle, one of the two.
it's not the coolest. The main masks I like are, of course, the Deku, the Goron, the Zora, and sure the great.
The giant.
Yeah, thank you. So when I played Ocarina of Time for the first time, great game, of course. I would always, as a kid, I was like, dude, these Gorons are so badass. I want to be a Goron. And then Majora's Mask came out, and it's like, I'm a Goron. And I would spend minutes, no, I wouldn't say hours, but minutes rolling around Termina Field as a Goron with his little spike ball. Yo, Goron mask. Yes, exactly. And I would just roll around, like running people over and driving through grass and stuff. And I thought it was amazing that could be a different species from Legend of Zelda.
Absolutely.
Use
Yeah.
that to solve problems and traverse the world and whatnot. And
So
Ramping
good.
off of shit and stuff. Yeah.
yes, it was so sweet. Ramping up. The Goron is the best mask, you can tell. The Deku's cool. He shoots snot bubbles, and the Zoro's really cool too. But the Goron just rolling around, throwing big rocks, stuff with sweet punching things. And the other masks are a lot of like one-shot masks. Some of them are just small gimmicks, like putting on a chicken mask and marching animals around and stuff. But
So
and there's
good.
even like there's
Hawk,
like the
yeah.
bomb mask that blows your face up. Yeah, it was sweet though, and
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite things because I mean the other items, there's fire, ice, light arrows, there's hook shot, there's bomb shoes, there's bombs. It's all from Ocarina of Time, or
Yeah,
and to
but
some
they
extent,
implemented the arrows a lot better in Majora's Mask for sure.
oh they did. Trying to think of what I want to say now. I guess that's the most of it for me is just being able to use those masks to essentially play the game in so many different ways. Yeah, the items in Breath of the Wild, and Ocarina of Time let you do different things and play the game and look at it a different way. But being an entirely new character kind of made it that much cooler for me. It just felt like a whole new game at times. Being able to swim underwater super fast and roll around the Goron races. The Goron races. So
Yeah, it was
yeah.
so. I
So
agree. I think that was what drew everyone into Majora's Mask was all those things.
yes,
I
Honestly,
think
where Ocarina of Time succeeded in dungeons, I feel that Majora's Mask basically is like, okay, here's all Ocarina of Time's items plus 24 masks, and they're all awesome. Like,
yeah.
um, because
so
like
good.
they even improved upon the Ocarina of Time items quite a bit in terms of like you don't need to upgrade your hookshot. You don't need to like your ice
Yeah,
arrows freeze the water. Like what the fuck is that? Like
so sweet.
all kinds of things. And then the masks, of course, were great. Yeah, so like I feel like Majora's Mask, since it was the direct sequel, like in a lot of ways the items acted the same or were the same,
Right.
and then added even more stuff to it. So that was really cool.
See, I feel going back to what you were saying was like how that had was Majora's Mask was the most one shot items. I It didn't feel like it though. Like I I don't know.
Because they
Maybe it was
weren't
just
main
perfect.
items. Yeah, the masks weren't main items. Yeah.
It was just a perfect blend of like it just you got all the stuff and it just didn't feel like it was just like, oh, I'm done with it now. Like you maybe it was like the collector in you and you're like, I got them, I got all these masks, and
Yeah.
you just
Mhm.
it just felt good to have those. Like I feel like in I would argue Skyward Sword was more like that just because there was times in a dungeon where it was just like, okay, now you got to go ride this little spin top just and it was just like they designed the thing just so you had to use it, and it was like it just didn't feel right, and it just felt forced, and you're like, okay, is there really any purpose to this item other than me just get traversing this dungeon because you put it there because you couldn't design a staircase instead, it just felt very forced, and
The
I
the the
never
boss
got
fight
that
was
feeling.
really awesome though.
Yeah, I mean the boss fight.
It
I've
was
never
so
finished
worth it
Skyward
because of the.
Sword.
No, no.
I never
Oh.
and
I mean, Twilight.
I never finished Majora's Mask either, actually. So I
Have you
got a
finished
lot of
Twilight
Zelda to catch
Princess?
up. Yes, I did finish Twilight
So the
Princess. I did.
spinner fight in Twilight Princess in the Spirit Temple was awesome.
I'm trying to remember that.
It's the
It,
giant skeleton. You like screw drive around the wall. I don't know how to describe.
Yep. That was good. That was good because then you
yeah,
were jumping from like track to track.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Even if it
Yeah,
was
it was
one
good.
shot, like at that point, I was like, this is just really, really cool.
That
Yeah.
fight was awesome.
Wait,
Now I want to play
well,
Twilight
I'm
Princess
not
again.
confusing it. There was a spinner top in Skyward Sword too, right?
Was there? Hold on, one
I thought
second.
there was. Maybe I'm confusing it.
I'm looking it up now because I don't remember.
I don't
I
think
know there's a
so.
whip in Skyward Sword.
There's a
Maybe it's
whip.
that. I know the whole realm with the birds thing was kind of annoying because it brought you out and you had to
Oh,
go
thank
fly
God.
over there and
Yeah, dude, I hate Skyward Sword. I don't hate it. For a game, it's a good game. For a Zelda game, I don't like it too much, but that's off the topic. I just wanted to say that.
yeah, no, that's a good call. Good call.
We can talk about other Zelda games and how they did it worse than the ones we chose at toward the
Fair.
end. Um,
So
I
if we
mean,
so
are,
a spinner top and Skyward Sword. That's all I wanted to say.
it wasn't in Skyward Sword.
I don't remember
no,
it being there. And
it
I'm not
wasn't.
Okay,
finding
so
it.
I am
Okay.
confusing it then. So then it was Twilight Princess with a bad design. Okay. No, no, actually, I really like Twilight Princess. I'll just say this real quick because I don't want to go too far topic. Like I felt like it was more compressed, where it was less of a immersed discovery world. I think you had that more in OOT than you did in Twilight Princess, and I think that, of course, Breath of the Wild just blew it all out of the water, where you could just go wherever the hell you want, do whatever you want, and that I think is just more beneficial than any other Zelda game, even including nostalgia feels and stuff like that. I just feel like it just felt so good. Yes, it took away from dungeons, but where it lacked in that, it made up superior, oh my god, sense of in the open world. And then if we're going to go on game mechanics, I want to keep going and
Excuse me.
say that the game mechanics on the Breath of the Wild with, oh my, like I watched the GDQ thing, and they like created their whole Hyrule space program where they, cut down a tree, they grabbed onto it, and they froze it, and then they shot across like all of Hyrule, and it's just like, you can do this in this game. You can do so much, and even the game developers themselves have admitted that
They didn't think
there's
of it,
still, well,
yeah.
there's still things that within this physics engine that they built that people still have yet to even discover, and like
And then there's things that people have discovered that they never even thought of.
yeah, they're like,
They're
wow,
like,
that's be crazy. So things like that is just like, oh my god, they went above and beyond with this physics engine, and I love it. And then arguably, I don't know if you guys subscribe to Game Grumps, but they famously had a whole OOT playthrough, and I'm actually a huge fan of them, so shout out to Game Grumps. But uh they I think they said it best, and I didn't really realize it when I first played OOT, because it was my first 3D game, and you're just absolutely blown away by all this thing. And I thought graphics would never be prettier, and now you look back and you see polygon boobs, and you're like, wow, that's terrible. But
why does
but
everybody always go back to that?
Because they look ridiculous.
it's so bad. But in the sense of fighting, the fighting in Breath of the Wild is incredibly difficult. It's a severe challenge. I don't even see how a 10-year-old Trell could even play Breath of the Wild. I would get smoked. And then if you look at the gameplay in OOT, to quote Game Grumps, there is so much goddamn waiting that you're sitting there, you're waiting for like the person to just give themselves an opening, and then you strike, and then you wait
Right.
again for another opening, you strike.
You
Where in
do
Breath
that
of the
in Breath of
Wild,
the Wild too, though.
arguably no, because there's so many different ways to kill a boss.
Hmm.
So you sometimes have to strike fast, sometimes you have to wait. I feel like they varied it a lot. Where I feel like in OT it was very much a like strike, wait, rinse, repeat type thing.
Ocarina of Time did have Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, because they're both on the same engine. Did
Yep.
have a lot of invulnerability moments, as I like to call them, where like no matter what you did to the enemy, even just normal enemies, it didn't matter. Uh,
Yep.
they had invincibility frames basically. They were rolling around. Um,
The bosses had lots of iframes.
yeah. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, I don't think there was really ever any iframes, or if there were, it's pretty low.
Maybe in the Ganon fight there was some times with iframes.
I actually haven't finished Breath of the Wild.
Ooh, no
Whoa.
way. No way.
Um,
No, he says no way.
you know why? Because I want to
What?
finish the DLC and then get
I
the.
haven't finished the DLC. See, I did the I with Breath of the Wild, I knew it was gonna be. It was so big, right? It's like Skyrim. It's like Fallout. It's
I
like
haven't
any one
finished
of those
Skyrim
games.
either because
I've
of
never
that.
played Skyrim.
Oh my god, that hurt. Uh,
Kill me.
so like with those games and the amount of side quests that you have in Breath of the Wild being so immersed, I knew that I was getting to that point where I was gonna start playing other games, and I was like, I need to either beat this now or I'm never going to beat it. And I didn't want it to be another game like Majora's Mask or Skyward Sword, that it was another Zelda game that I started but didn't finish. But so I do owe it to myself to go back and do the DLC. But I went ahead and just committed, and that's what I did with Skyrim. I just committed. I was like, I need to beat it, or it's never gonna happen. And I would recommend that to you, Wombat.
Well, see, you know I'm a completionist, right?
Oh, that's right. Never mind. It's never gonna
So,
happen.
Wait, are you gonna go for all the Korok seeds?
Dude,
Wombat?
uh, Kirby, I'm already at 600 and some.
Oh, I don't
oh my
understand you.
god, it's never gonna happen. It's
Props to
never
you,
gonna happen.
but
Um, I'm not going for all the Korok seeds till I complete the game.
okay.
But I have like I got as many Korok seeds as I needed to be fully upgraded, and
Can
then I found some as I was going through other things. But
I tell you something
I
about
wanna
the
beat.
final fight?
It's disappointing as hell.
No, I want to say it's like OOT, and I don't know if you want me to tell you or not. So you have
As
to
in
say.
that there's more than one type of like it. There's different sections to the fight.
No, 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 no. Like more or less like this, the how when you beat it, you don't have like an after stage.
Okay.
So you're like you're always gonna go back to like there's always a Ganon. There's no like your post
Right.
Ganon world.
Right. Yeah, no,
So
that's fine. So like I want to beat it. I know that there's a special ending if you do something.
yeah, I won't
Um
say.
and I want to beat the DLC since it's pre that fight. So like I want to get the
Okay.
whole game done.
Okay.
I don't need to collect everything to beat the game. I just want to get the whole storyline.
Okay.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
I
I just
have
wanted to give
collected
you
all the
that.
memories, so
That's fair. Even I did that.
I just wanted to give you that so that way that you could go beat the game and it's no harm, no foul, because then you'll come
right.
back to a post or a pre Ganon
There's two
defeat.
things I'll be doing after I beat Ganon, and that's getting all the Korok seeds and getting all the encyclopedia entries.
So
You're gonna go
man.
scan everything.
Yep.
He's
I
coming up for you,
actually
man.
Oh my
so
god.
here's something. I'm gonna say this real quick. So once I get my second monitor, I'm gonna be starting a playthrough of Breath of the Wild from the beginning, and it's basically Indiana Link and the Last Crusade. Um, it's basically I'm gonna have a sketchbook on hand. I'll be taking notes on specific things. I'll be an explorer like Indiana Jones, looking at Hyrule as a land to be discovered and like trying to figure out things like from the past and connect it to
Uh-huh.
the future. So like translating text on different places. I can even throw up some examples at some point of pictures I've drawn. But like I'm gonna be sketching landscapes, like mapping out things. It's gonna be like a creative slash Zelda stream, so it'll be really cool.
So
Okay.
a Super Mario Maker Breath of the Wild courses are inbound?
Yep. Confirmed. That's what I
No,
heard. That's what I heard him
Confirmed.
say.
That's right. That's exactly what I heard.
Confirmed.
No.
No, that'd be actually pretty sweet to see. I would look forward to watching that. To be honest, maybe you'll even break the internet and find out like how this is all connected in the Zelda timeline.
Yeah, maybe.
Man, I mean, I used to consider myself a completionist, but not to that extent. When I say completionist, I mean like I get the main stuff. Like in your case, like I would get enough of the Korok seeds for fully upgraded, and I would not get a single one more.
Um, I like to have every award from the game. So, like for example, I've completed um, Dark Souls 1 Remastered. I've gotten
Right.
all the achievements. I haven't gotten all the items though. You know what I mean? Like there's items
Yeah.
that you'd get from doing specific things certain ways or not
Yeah.
dying or
Sure.
whatever. I don't care about that, to be honest. Um,
Okay.
but I got enough of the stuff in the game like that I feel like I've completed. Like I have all the achievements, I've beaten the game, I've beat all the bosses,
Okay.
things like that. So
Okay.
in Breath of the Wild in Zelda, it's always a little bit different, like because there's a counter for all the encyclopedia entries. There's a counter for all the Korok seeds. So it's like, okay, well I have to max out that counter.
Okay. I was gonna ask like, what's your reward for the excitement? You just answered my question though. So.
The encyclopedia, I don't think you get a reward. You get some bonus pictures. But
Oh, okay.
it's kind of like in Wind Waker. There's the whatchamacallit, the gallery, the sculpture gallery. That's
Uh huh.
really awesome. I like that sculpture gallery because it gives you like
I actually really enjoyed that too. That
yeah.
was fun.
You'll have
See,
to.
I'm gonna have
Trell
to
has
play
no idea
this.
what we're talking about, but
No, I don't like.
you take
To
you
be
take a
honest.
picture of an enemy and it gives you like a 3D sculpture of it in the collector
Oh wow.
gallery, and like you can take a look at it. And it's really hella artistic. It's cool.
So I was probably on the same bandwagon as most people when Wind Waker came out, that I thought it looked terrible and I didn't even want to play it.
It
Dude, I
looked
love that so much.
beautiful.
Yeah, what do you, Trell?
Yeah,
I can't
no,
begin with you right
no,
now.
It's
like
just your
if
expectations were set too high from Ocarina of Time. It just
yeah,
looked too
well,
different.
because from Ocarina to
And then
Majora's
Twilight
and then to
Princess
Wind
too.
Waker, because Wind Waker was right after Majora's, and
And they did
I think
advertise it as like a realistic game. Like they showed like a Ganon and Link fight as
yep.
something that they were working on. And then a year later they came out with yeah, Wind Waker. It's like what's this? So
So yeah,
yeah,
and it had massive backlash from what I remember. I remember
yeah.
that it actually was disappointing upon release, but it's aged probably one of the better games that has aged over the other series.
Right.
Like where now that art style everyone finds adorable as opposed to like hideous.
There's
And
even a Toon Link in Super Smash Brothers because people like it
right,
so much.
Yeah.
right. And like looking back, I'm like, and I agree. I like looking back, I'm like, I don't care if it's cartoon. I just like Zelda games. So now I'm like, I don't know why I avoided it. It was silly to even do that. So I definitely probably gonna blind play through that here pretty soon. But um,
Yeah.
like the point I want to try to get into next is basically with Wind Waker, Majora's, OT, almost all of the Zelda games. Not, I don't know about that's the probably pretty heavy weighted statement, but music is a strong thing in Zelda games, and I think with both your guys' choices, it was definitely a big key factor was music in
You even had an
um,
item that played music that you played it with.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think with Breath of the Wild, it lacked that. I thought the music throughout your journey, like the background music or the ambiance or whatever, I thought it was great. But I definitely
It was a lot of
I want,
ambient stuff instead of like catchy tunes.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that was one thing that it was lacking as well. If I'm gonna point out what I don't like about Breath of the Wild, along with I think where it made up was in its game mechanics and things like that. But there was definitely things that I had issues with about the game. But I think music was such a strong point in the Zelda franchise that for me, like the best song was "Song of Healing" in Majora's. I think that's my favorite
Yep.
one.
Mhm.
So
Do do
I wish I had something to say about like a song of some sort for Breath of the Wild. And it was just like I think the songs and the bosses and things like that make or sometimes going through those points make the game more memorable. So even though I think Breath of the Wild is memorable in just how it blew everyone's minds, I just don't think that there's going to be key points of like the game that people are going to remember. Like, oh, I remember that boss fight because those parts were kind of like stepped on with just the sheer amount of crazy crap you can do in the game. So
Yeah.
but no, nothing purely memorable. I think maybe the most memorable part would be the Ganon fight. So that's why I'm looking forward to seeing you do that, Wombat.
So, what I think you're trying to say is that Breath of the Wild, what it doesn't do great, it doesn't do very good, but what it does do well, it's exceptional at.
That's yep. You nailed it. That's definitely the way to say it.
Yeah, and I feel like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time both have like pros and cons, but they're kind of like they're they're solid throughout, whereas you've got extremes, so it kind of
Yep.
balance itself in a way. I do feel like the biggest memorable thing from Breath of the Wild was just exploring and discovering things, and like finding like seeing the Zora area for the first time from
This is
above,
already beautiful. Oh
So
my
good.
god.
or like
Just ridiculous.
Yeah, I was freaking out.
or like climbing tall mountains and looking out over Hyrule, like
Right.
small moments.
Part of the
Not
game with that, yeah, exactly. Part of the game wasn't like, okay, I gotta go fight Bongo Bongo. I gotta go get the
right,
Ones of Truth. It was like, I'm gonna climb this big ass mountain just to say I freaking did it.
right,
It's just, and that was just your satisfaction right there. It was
right.
ridiculous.
So like they basically turn the game into like it doesn't matter what you do, it's gonna be cool. And it's on your terms, which is a really neat aspect and something I really appreciate from Breath of the Wild. And I'm excited that they're going to continue that with more open world stuff in future Zelda titles. I just hope that they learn from the things that Breath of the Wild didn't do as well, uh, to make even better games, which will be great.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where Nintendo goes next with
I
Zelda.
can't wait for them to make my next favorite Zelda game. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good way to say it.
All right, so I think gameplay mechanic wise, Trell, because I don't know how much you went into that. Like the one thing that I will say about gameplay mechanics is there was a lot of variety in weapons. There was a lot of variety in things that you could do. You could cook your own food that helped you in certain ways.
Yep.
Uh, you always had enough items in terms of like you always had bombs like in two different types, ones that rolled, one that didn't. And I liked that those four were from the get-go. I wish there was more like that you got over time as well, but I understand the route that they chose for that.
You just missed the bomb shoe.
No, I don't care about the bomb chew. It's more like where's my grappling hook?
Yeah, it was so like I guess a good way to compare a good way
But
to talk about the gameplay is that you got all your items right out of the gate with
with
Breath
the
of the Wild. It
exception
was just like
of you don't have a master sword, you don't have like your items break, and that's the big thing that I wanted to talk about.
right,
Item
right. And
durability.
the Master Sword, as good as it was, it wasn't it wasn't game breaking where it was like all of a sudden there was a point where it's like now you have the Master Sword, the game is different because it still had that effect where it got weak and then you had to let it recharge and things like that. So it was better than the scrub weapons that you had before. You weren't using a stick, but it was but it was still not game changing, I guess. So it in the sense where you had to build up your arsenal in the other games, it was like, you get it all right now, you're building up your skill as opposed to an arsenal in Breath of the Wild. And I thought that was just you learned how to control this link better over time.
Sure. I just wish that either durability was able to be improved with weapons that you use other than the master sword, or you
Right.
could repair them. Because once they break and you can't get it again, or like in some aspects, some weapons you can never get again. Um,
Yeah.
Wait, really? What weapons can you not get again? I didn't know that.
there's like the forest shield, the forest sword, the
I got
one that shoots 3 arrows is hard to get again. You know, things like
it.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, there's like weapons that like their durability once they're gone, and like that's kind of disappointing to me. Like I wish, and I've heard a lot of people complain about durability in general, and like as a whole, I get it. Like they want people to use different weapons and be challenged and stuff, but like when I'm fighting this thing with extra hard skin and like all my weapons break and I'm down to like arrows or like the stick I found on the ground, it's not fun anymore. It's just like, well, this sucks, and I can't repair anything.
But
So,
it's also like that. I don't know. Maybe Dark Souls has corrupted me, but it's just that whole
but
twist
you can
there where it's just
repair
like
things in Dark Souls.
right.
So,
But I mean, yeah, you can. I guess what we need a bonfire and
I
like some
need a big
adaptability
Goron. I
in.
need a big Goron right now.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Uh, well, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like that, it added like an unfairness to it, but
I
it
didn't
didn't.
think it was unfair. It just sometimes made situations a little worse for wear.
Right, right. So I should say I can see how that would be a negative thing for you. And if in my sense it was a positive thing. I liked it better than the hand holding, I guess, because it didn't feel like hand holding.
Yeah. And a lot of people have said that it's the hardest Zelda, and I completely agree. There's a lot to it that like if you don't get timing down, if you never learn how to parry, which is
Oh, right.
very Dark Souls thing, then you're gonna have a lot more trouble with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, what
You
are
can
those
still beat the
Minotaur things
game, but you'll
called?
die again. What was that?
What are those Minotaur things called? Were they
Oh, the Lionel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lionel. Oh my
Lionel's.
god. The first time you met one of those, I think
Oof.
everyone was the lightning one with the lightning arrow, and
Nope,
you're just
not
like,
mine.
Oh, mine
"Oh,
was. Damn, look at you
yeah, mine was.
wanting
Where did you wander?"
So,
Where the hell did you?
so we're getting off topic, but
That's okay.
so when you leave the Great Plateau, you can go
Yep.
any direction you want, and it's like you
Yeah.
can go like to the east if you want, but I was like, yo, there's this mountain like right next door to this Great Plateau, and it's got a storm at the top of it. There's probably like a temple or something up there. I want to check it out. So I flew over there, and my glider didn't let me get to the top. So, but like I landed down below, and I saw this big round structure, with like, and like the name dropped for it. It was the Colosseum or the ruined Colosseum. I was like,
Mm.
yo, this is cool. So I go in, and there's like this big lionel in there, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, holy shit, this looks like a mini boss or a boss or something. What is
Getting
this?
stomped.
And then I go in, and he completely destroyed me. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you can watch my like trail for the replay, and like it's like it goes straight there, and then X, and then it respawns me. I'm like, oh shit,
Oh my
that was
God.
quick. But yeah, so my first line I was like right next to the Great Plateau.
Wow. Yeah. Man.
I didn't go to Kakakuriko Village for a while because wombat strats. I wanted to I unlocked the entire map first.
Oh, really? Wow.
I got
No,
all the
see,
towers first except for two.
I was used to more being kind of catered, your next quest, like, because that's kind of the Zelda formula, I guess we should say. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
go to the forest, go to the fire, go to the water, and then all of a sudden it's like, here you're in the Great Plateau, and then it's like, well, Ganon needs to be killed. Go figure it out, kid. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah,
that's
go get 'em.
crazy.
Right, which
Go
is
get him, Tiger. And you're like, where do I go? So I think I wandered towards I just wanted.
objectives.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let me just go in this general direction, I guess. Let's figure it out.
Yeah,
Let me
with
just
me
look
I
on
was
the
like,
map.
oh, this is open world. Well, I'm gonna be open about it. I'm gonna enjoy it on my own terms, and I did. So
Yeah,
I did like a full circle. I went down after that and went around in a big
yeah,
circle.
yeah.
So
That's see that right there was what made that game the best for me. Was just it completely just melted my mind, and in that sense where it just, I
and
don't
no
know.
matter how big it is, because of it, everybody has a different experience that they can talk about and share, and like say,
Yeah,
did you ever see this? Did you discover that? Like, it felt very like Zelda 1 when people were talking about like, oh, I discovered that you could bomb this wall and it takes you to this. Like back
Yep.
before the internet when you could look everything up. So, but
So good.
you can
so
shield surf. You can shield surf.
that's
We
true.
haven't
There's
talked
a
about
lot.
shield surfing. What is
So
the shield surf in OT or Majora's?
Oh
yeah,
my god.
so it doesn't matter if you can shield surf because in Majora's Mask you can swim like a dolphin or roll like a Goron,
Dude, you
which you
can yeah, dude.
can't do in. In fact,
I'll
you
roll like a
can.
Goron
I
any
would
day.
say rolling like a Goron trumps shield surfing any day because shield
You can
surfing.
swim up waterfalls, easy.
Yep. So can Azora. Yeah, like it did do travel well. In fact, I think it did it too well. There is a lot of gameplay to mechanics to unpack in Breath of the Wild, so it's understandable that it's taking the most time. But like, think about it this way: how many times did you use your horse?
I
Never,
never used it.
never. I didn't see
That's why it did it
the.
too well.
Yep. I no. I can. And yeah, like the horse. You getting Epona like meant something in OOT. Getting just a random horse and never using it. It was like it was a cute little feature, but it never really meant anything in Breath of the Wild.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting a horse like was cool at first, but you never rode it because you had fast travel, which invalidated that. Which is why with my playthrough as Indiana Link, I won't be fast traveling
I
at
love
all.
that. Indiana Link.
Indiana Link. Yep.
Uh,
No fast travel.
no
Oh
fast
man,
travel. That's a
dude,
self-imposed rule.
rip your life. It's gonna take forever.
You have the
But
patience of a god wombat.
but I'm gonna be stopping and looking at surroundings and like drawing and shit like that. So like it makes sense. Like I don't want to miss aspects of the world. Like I'm gonna be taking it from a fresh view too. So
That'll be good. Will you have like a camera on your drawings so we can
yeah,
just the
yeah.
people?
Since
Oh,
I got
that'd
two
be sweet.
cameras,
Nice, nice. So it'll be like your cat cam, but for your sketchbook or whatever.
right?
Nice.
Yeah, I'll take the cat cam and move it.
Nice.
All right. So we've covered mechanics and dungeons. Let's talk about story.
Okay. Wow. There's just so much story in Majora's Mask. I don't know where to begin. I definitely paid attention to all of it.
Or is
So
there?
I have no idea.
All of it. Oh no, this Kirby has nothing to talk about.
Let me tell you what I know about the story. You lost and you got sent back, and then there's a moon is gonna crash
Sent
down
back?
because I don't know what happened.
What? How do you
Your
not? The
Skull
story is
Kid
so
has
good.
No, it's not. It has Majora's Mask, and he's gonna throw the moon down on you, so you gotta do something about it. Really, that's all I can tell you. And you go to dungeons to stop to let the four giants come up and stop the moon from hitting the ground. That happens.
Wombat, educate him.
All right, so here's what you
Wait,
got for
what's
story, guys. Papa Josh's story time. So basically, Majora's Mask is all about how the Skull Kid got Majora's Mask and has been wreaking havoc on Termania to the point where it's going to be destroyed from the moon. He's gotten a little uh, too playful, and that's because Majora's Mask is actually possessing him. Uh, so your task is to try and undo all the damage he's doing to Termania enough that you can actually battle him, and you collect the masks of different heroes of the land that have been killed by him, murdered, uh, to do so. And if you collect all the masks, you get this pretty sick mask called the Fierce Deities mask.
so sweet.
But ultimately speaking, there isn't a lot of story to Majora's Mask. There is a lot of story in terms of mini stories, which is what I think is the real strength of it. Like the character development, characters and
Right.
story is all kind of in there together, right? Like Kirby, you know some of the character stuff, right?
Oh yeah, I know the side quests. Like there's that main side quest, like Anji and whoever. I can't remember the other name. Yeah, I know the side quest.
Yeah, like Cafe and
Yeah,
Anju.
they cafe. That's what I was. Yes, thank you. That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah,
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 that stuff is great, and
yeah.
that's I guess that would be the strength. And that's one thing I mentioned earlier was that as in my opinion, really nice side quests that I did actually pay attention to. But
Right.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
like the storyline itself is pretty simple. Like
right.
Skull Kid fucks shit up, and you
He's
unfuck it
it's pretty
up,
Right.
it's pretty
Right.
much it.
and try and make the
It's a
world
one line.
survive a
Yes.
fourth day.
Is it canon that the moon's face looks like that, or did Skull could do that, or does that moon just look like that always? Because I would be pretty mad.
I'm pretty sure Majora's Mask did that to the moon.
Okay, because if it always looked like that, I'm like, why we live here?
Yeah, nightmare fuel for sure.
Because it opens up and swallows you, and then you're in the Majora's Mask land.
That's a good
So
point. Did not consider that.
I think that the Majora's Mask has enchanted the moon.
Well, thank you for your help on, but yeah, I agree. The side quests are it's greatest strength story wise, which it has a
See,
lot of. That
I
sorry,
think
but
no, well, I think side quests started picking up with Majora's Mask, right? Like you had the side quests meant more in that than they did in OOT. In OOT, the side quests were non-existent to blah, and I thought that with Majora's Mask, it started kind of like, hey, look, let's create a more immersed world to get yourself you feel more connected to the Link. You're starting to root for him more when you get that deeper connection,
yeah,
and then they went insane with it in Breath of the Wild, probably to the point that maybe you could have eased up on that, maybe more on the dungeons and the bosses, but the side quests were ridiculous in Breath of the Wild. But I think that's where with Majora's Mask, that was the point where they started going towards more side quests.
Right.
mhm.
And I think that some games don't do enough side quests. Some games do a lot of side quests. I prefer lots of side quests, to be
I prefer
honest.
side quests if the rewards are actually good. 'Cause some games the
Sure.
rewards are like, why the hell did you even give this to me? But yes, I agree with what you're
Like
saying.
Yeah,
collecting
Dead
bugs
Space
in
3.
Twilight Princess.
Yeah, it's like why, dude? I did it, but still, why?
Yeah, yeah. There's but like ultimately speaking, it's just fun to complete them and like have different interactions and like learn different things about the world.
Right.
It's cool. Ocarina of Time, there is some side quests. I like the balance of side quests versus actual storyline, but the storyline itself, there's so many twists. It's definitely one of the more iconic storylines and referenced quite a bit. Um, I really do like the storyline of Twilight Princess less than Ocarina of Time, even though like Twilight Princess is like referencing it in a lot of ways. Um, but like, who wasn't surprised at first by Sheik being Zelda? Like,
Oh yeah,
that's
I
a
was
really
like,
great twist.
Oh yeah,
oh
yeah. I
yeah, dude,
think
it's great.
I don't know.
Um,
I kind of I think at first I was
spoiler
a
alert.
little bit
Spoiler.
yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. Oh my gosh. But I think I was kind of on I had a hint of it to begin with, so I don't know if I was completely surprised. But
Gotcha. But yeah, like storyline wise, I think Breath of the Wild also has a really good story. Uh, Probably almost, I would say probably on par with Ocarina of Time because of like, but it's not told in a way that I like. You know what I
I
mean?
get that. I really do get that. I think that they could have if
And
I see. I like
there's no twists. You know what I mean?
yeah, because right. So man, you got me all fired up. I got words need to come out of my mouth. So with Majora's Mask, I really liked the dark undertones of that game. I don't know
Yep.
why. I just kind of like get drawn to
It's
more.
really cool. Yeah.
I
It's
that's
a land that's being ravaged,
yeah. I don't know. That just really. I just really like that kind of storyline. Maybe
like
it's
the
like the
second part of Ocarina
underdog.
of Time almost, right?
Right. It's like the underdog thing or something like that.
Mhm.
Is more it shines more in that. I don't know. But with Breath of the Wild, it was like you started out and it was dark tones like crazy because it was like you've already failed. You
Yep.
died. And
Yep.
then you're coming back and it's like redemption. And it was just like for me, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Okay, we got to fix this because
Yeah.
we didn't do it
Right.
right the first time. So I thought that was so good. And the storyline I think is probably one of the best storylines in that aspect. But because they were more focused on the open world, they probably and they didn't cater the storyline to you like they did in the other ones. So it was kind of like that it didn't tell it as well. I think was the best way to put it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the storyline itself is pretty. It's bland. It's good. Like it's got a good tone, but it's bland. Like it's literally Link goes, collects the four portions of the dungeons, and then goes to fight Ganon.
Right. Right.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
memories, the real storyline is the past that's already happened. So it's not really a storyline. That's like bonus
You're
content.
learning.
You're learning about
Relearning what
yourself,
happened. Yeah.
right? And like I liked that, but it didn't give enough. It gave a great relationship between Link and Zelda, which was cool, and between the sages or the whatever the champions. But
Right.
ultimately, like some of the like catching frogs or like some of the memories just like was good relationship and like good stuff like that. But like there wasn't a it wasn't a lot. It was pretty simple, and it was neat to have that, but like it wasn't told in the best way. Um,
I
and like
agree.
it was really easy to miss a lot of it. And since they were not in order, like you need to have to rewatch them to get them in order. Like it was also kind of confusing and whatnot. So like in that way, like that's why like it is a really cool storyline, and I really but like it's more like the game speaks for itself by the ambience and the tone rather than an actual story.
Right.
Whereas Ocarina of Time is an actual plot. Like it's like an RPG adventure, whereas like even like say equal titles with open world, like The Witcher or The
Oh,
Witcher
I've never played The
3.
Witcher.
I haven't either, but I know that
Witcher's
there's a
so
story.
good.
Or let's just say Skyrim because Kirby hasn't played Skyrim, but you have. Just so you're on the same page as me, Skyrim has a pretty thorough story with a big open world with lots to do, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you can pretty much tackle the story whenever you want and on your own terms, kind of like Zelda, but it at least has it laid out in a specific fashion. And like the way they did it with the memories, you could learn the story in any order and take the game on in any order you want and be it like completely open. And that's cool, but it also made it that they couldn't really tell a big story.
You can only get it in chunks. Yep. I know.
And
I can
it's only in the past, like it's not in the future or the present. So
exactly. Yeah, getting it in small little bite-sized chunks like that, I don't think tells it as well as if you were on a journey. But
everyone's already dead, so like there's not really much more you can do for the current story, only for the past, like what happened.
yep, you're just learning how you screwed up and how what you can do to correct it this time type
Right.
thing. I I completely agree with everything you just said. I think it was probably arguably the best storyline. Like I think everyone says OOT had the best storyline just because maybe they're trying to they like that whole elements sensation
I certainly do.
and being like kind of walked through the story where in Breath of the Wild it's more just like pick and choose. You go to chapter 1, then you go to chapter 9, and you're back in chapter 5, and it's just like they didn't tell it too well.
See, yeah, and that's the big thing. Like if the like I don't know if the story would be good if it was in order or not. Um, like I think the strongest part of the story is the fact that you can take it on your own terms, but it's also the weakest part. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Right,
Hey,
right.
William, how we doing? Um, so I guess what's the last thing that we wanted to talk about? I guess overarching things like did anybody sway anybody else in in the games, or
Um,
are you rethinking your decision?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
We're
God,
talking about our favorite game, our favorite Zelda games, William. Who each of the three of us has a different Zelda game that we have as our favorite.
yeah, I mean, I can't say I don't love your guys' games, and there's parts of your guys' games that are definitely my favorite of the franchise. But I think overall, if I had to say like, what if someone on the street was just like, "What's the best Zelda game right now?" I'm like, Breath of the Wild, easy, hands down. Just because of the amount of gameplay, the beauty behind it, the mechanics, the physics is, and even the storyline, even though it's not told as well, the bosses and the dungeons not as good as the other ones, but still challenging and in their own sense. And I just think hands down it has to be Breath of the Wild.
I'll say this. If someone asked me, hey, you can only starting from right now, you can only play one Zelda game for the rest of your life, I would probably
Oh
pick
my
Breath of the
god.
Wild. But listen, but the reason is because right
Oh,
now it's the most polished and it would give me the most hours. Like I think that was like a 70-hour game. There was still more to do compared to Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
Yep.
Now, if I had the opportunity to play Majora's Mask when I first played it, however the hell old I was, like I was it 2001 or two or whatever,
Little Trail
I would
or little Kirby.
Little
yeah,
curb.
Lil Kerbo, I would probably pick that just because of the sense of awe and excitement I got from being in that world and with the different characters. But
I
if I
guess
had
it
to
would be
choose
mini Kirby because you're
mini Kirby,
mega.
a mega Kirby, yeah,
Yeah.
micro Kirby over here. If we're
Micro
gonna go
micro
10
Micro
to
yeah.
Kirby.
if we're going 10 to the 6 powers, then yeah, it'd be 10 to the negative 6 micro Kirby over here. Yeah. Like if it's in current time, I would pick Breath of the Wild because it's the most polished and give me the most playtime. If it was with my first experience, I would still stick with Majora's Mask.
So Majora's Mask was your first game?
Not my first game. Sorry, I meant like if my first impression of Majora's Mask. If I could go back to
Right.
that time, then I would
Gotcha.
pick my first Zelda game was actually Ocarina of Time. But
Okay. Was that all three of ours first game?
Yeah, that was my first Zelda game.
Cool.
Was OT.
Nice. Um, I I would say that I haven't been swayed, but I do see the validity in your statements. Breath of the Wild, I really love the world, and I will always love that. Like I'm gonna be doing a stream on on the world itself. That's basically what I'm showcasing it. So like,
yeah.
there's definitely a lot of cool stuff. Um, but a lot of it just didn't feel enough like my favorite things about Zelda. Like it didn't fill those checks for me. And
Right.
I don't at the end of the day I don't mind the story as much as I love the um I don't know let's see. So I was reading William's comment. It's not going
Mhm.
to be Zelda centric all the time. I mean, like we talk about Dark Souls quite a bit too. It's really it's wherever we go to. Like just
Yeah.
this week
Whatever
is
the topic is of
this
the
is the
week,
topic of the
basically.
week. So we're trying to get it out of our system. So
Yeah.
Yep.
um, yeah. So like the biggest disappointment was how short the dungeons were, and like the overall sense of accomplishment for defeating the dungeons wasn't really that big either. Like, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff to unpack in all three games. But Breath of the Wild, if you're gonna think about it, has like the most to unpack. It's got the most game, as as Kirby said.
Mhm.
So
So
that makes
I
sense.
liked I liked how Kirby asked it. If you had to pick one Zelda game to play for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, you know my answer. It's gonna be Ocarina of Time.
What game has the most replayability?
Definitely Breath of the Wild, in my opinion.
I would have to agree because it's going to be a different experience every single time.
Yeah, but like if you've explored the area, like that the so your best playthrough of Breath of the Wild is going to be the first one when you're discovering the land. It's very
True.
open and it's very at your own thing. Yes, there's going to be replayability because you could go a different way each time, but now that you know the world, you know where to go, you know what to do, and it's going to be a lot different. For instance, I'm gonna maybe my opinion will change when I replay it for the first time, but I haven't needed to replay it again. Whereas with Ocarina of Time, I've beat the game like 30, 40 times, and I've remade it like twice. So,
Jeez.
like, like I have a lot of replayability in Ocarina of Time, even though it's the same thing each time. Like, I still really, it's entertaining. It doesn't get old. And Breath of the Wild, like, the biggest charm for it is the newness and the exploration. But like once you've explored it, like it's not new anymore. It's whereas with Ocarina of Time, it's more about finding well, like there's little secrets in both, and I'm sure I'll find new things in Breath of the Wild on my second playthrough. But like
Right.
since it's so big, it's almost too overwhelming to be like, oh well, maybe I'll find something new in X place that I never saw before. You know what I mean? Like it's too big for me to like Ocarina of Time is nice and like compact enough, but big enough that I can be like, holy crap, I never knew that before, while also knowing the game and being okay with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that
I
make
guess that might.
sense?
I think I follow you. My argument would just be that like I'm not the completionist like you, so I know
Right.
that Breath of the Wild will always offer me a unique experience, I think.
Right. Whereas with me, I might have already discovered X and Y that you never did. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I'd be surprised though if you hadn't like 1,000%ed OOT at this point.
Yeah. I I I I would say that game is dead and buried in terms of being completed. When you've remade a game in Mario Maker, I think that's pretty thorough.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess as an argument, then how would you be able to get anything new out of it? You would just be playing it for pure nostalgia, probably at that point.
Nostalgia, I like racing people in it. Like,
Oh wow.
uh,
Have you done any randos? I know that that's a big thing on
I
Twitch right now.
haven't I haven't done any randos, and mostly it's because I haven't gone through the work of getting that onto being a way to do it. Um,
Okay.
but I'm also wary about doing it on the computer because like I won't have my good old N64 controller. So,
Of course.
God, the design of those controllers, I don't know what they were thinking.
but I'm used to it. So,
Yeah.
um, so what about so you both would play Breath of the Wild for the rest of your life, right?
If it was right now, yes. But if I had the opportunity to experience Majora's Mask for the first time, every time I played it, it would be that one. If that makes sense.
Who's the
Right, right.
world's fastest Zelda speedrunning champion? Be honest, I'm not sure who it is.
What Zelda
Uh
game? I mean,
yeah,
which
Yeah,
it would
each
what
Zelda
depend on
game
game?
it's
which one
different.
and
Um,
which category and which game
right.
too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Or are you
variables
talking
there.
about out of the three of us, who's the fastest?
Oh, Wombat. I'm assuming he knows the games better than either of us. So
Probably Wombat would know it faster.
it would take me time to remember what the hell I have to do.
Have you ever attempted a OOT speedrun?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Um,
you have?
I I'm I don't like speedruns where there's glitches or like exploits. I like just playing the game.
Agreed. I like
Okay.
watching those ones. I mean, the glitch ones are fun because it's cool to see what
Yeah,
they can do. But in terms of
it's just personal
skill,
preference. Like I
yeah.
prefer to play the game. Like even with Dark Souls, like I was really impressed with like the exploits in that and how fast they could complete the game. I was like, what? But like,
Yeah. I know.
I
I was
mean,
I was pretty blown away. After I beat the game, that was the first thing I did. I was like, gotta watch the speed
yeah,
run. How bad did they break it?
yeah, and there's a lot of similarities between the speedruns of Dark Souls and the speedruns of Ocarina of Time, in terms of like the swordless or like the item switching and things like that, and then the
Yeah.
wrong warp stuff. Um, So it's really impressive, but like it's not stuff that I'm as interested in. I'd prefer like have somebody else who's pretty comfortable with the game and like try going through it with each other and see who can be better at beating the game rather than
Yeah.
like
Right.
on a
It's
world
kind of like what we did
scale.
the other night with Drunk Souls.
Right,
That was
exactly.
pretty cool.
Yeah. So, um, so yeah, I hope that answers your question, William. So I guess to finish up, let's talk about some of the other Zelda games and why they didn't make the cut, or like we've talked about them a bit. So like first of all, Skyward Sword's been getting a lot of hate. I think Skyward Sword's the biggest strength was its story. That relationship between Link and Zelda
It was the
was
start.
the best. The best relationship. Like it was very thought out and very emotional and really cool. What I didn't like about it was the repetitive nature of certain areas, going back to specific places and doing the same thing. Boss fight that you did 3 times with
Oh my
varying.
god. And it wasn't even a good fight.
No, it wasn't, and it didn't look good either. I thought it would at least at some
Right.
point look cool, but like no, it just looked dumb the whole time. There
So
was a
there's
few bosses in some dungeons, like the dungeons were cool, but the end boss was terrible. There was a really, really cool boss. Coloctus was great. Um,
they're not spoilers.
but yeah, you were gonna say something, Trell.
Well, like I know that it's probably the most hated Zelda game, and to be honest, I didn't hate it. I liked it. I had my beef with it for sure, but I definitely did not hate it. I would. I mean, I plan on going back and finishing it because I never finished it, but there was parts of it that were cool, being out and up in the clouds and stuff like that. Being that it was the kickoff of the storyline was pretty cool. I
Yeah,
did like that. So it was like,
creating the Skyward Sword turning into the Master Sword was cool. Yeah.
yeah, it was just things like that. You're just like, wow, this is so intriguing to see this unfold, because at this point, if you're a fanboy of the franchise, you already know a lot of the answers, but you're just getting more of that backstory, and you're getting excited and
Right.
giddy when you're like, oh, here comes the Master Sword.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god. So
Yeah, it's basically the backstory of the Master Sword is in that game. It's which is like more than you ever thought. Like the Master Sword's alive. What?
yeah. So I do appreciate it in its own sense. I think it was also probably the start to some talks about Breath of the Wild, just because people, I think with the amount of hate that it got, and people were like it was boring, it was too repetitive, and I think that's why they were like, okay, we'll show you. We'll show you guys what non-repetitive is, and that's when they were like, I got a feeling that's what kicked them off and fueled them for Breath of the Wild, in my opinion. So I appreciate it for that sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, I also really liked Kirby. You've played Skyward Sword, right?
Yeah, it's my least favorite.
What didn't you like about it, and what did you like?
I thought a lot of what you guys have said, it's super repetitive. I don't want to fly on this dumb beak billed bird to go to different areas.
I don't
One,
like the controls.
I don't like the controls. I don't like any of the items actually. I don't even like the dungeons a whole lot, to be honest.
Some of the dungeons were really cool. Some of them weren't as cool, but
Yeah, I really didn't like that repetitive boss fight. I mean, again, as a game, if I just took it as a standalone game, it's all right. It's decent. It's decent to like pretty good. As a Zelda game, I think it's pretty bad.
hmm.
Um,
Oh, that's interesting to say that. Yeah, if you don't like, if you take it away of comparison to the other Zelda games, it's like
yeah,
it's not, it's a pretty cool game.
yeah. Like if I had never played a Zelda game before, like that game was pretty good. But if I put it on board with all the other Zelda games, it's bad. I don't. I mean, I don't know. That it's hard for me to say what I really liked about it as a Zelda game, to be honest. I don't think it did. You said the story was good, and you've already heard my opinion on what I feel about story for the most part, so I can't talk about that. But excluding story, I can't think of anything that did better than any other Zelda game.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
like even the characters were really cool. Like Sheikah, Groose was hilarious. Like how he turned from a bully to like one of the like biggest saviors in Zelda. Like he was just like the pompadour and everything. This is so funny. Yeah, there's a lot of like neat characters in that one.
Mhm.
And like the time travel aspect was neat too. Like doing time travel in a different way, whereas like the time stones, that was cool too, like seeing the past and the future.
That was interesting. Yeah.
I feel like they could have done more with it. And I kind of hope that Breath of the Wild would bring that mechanic back in some way, but it didn't. Um, but yeah, now Wind Waker, you guys know my opinions on Wind Waker. Like I really liked it, but there was like it fell short in terms of like content. Like you know those the ice and fire islands where it's like a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
you get the fire and ice arrows
Yes.
and they're like mini dungeons. Those are supposed to be full blown dungeons.
That would have been sweet because yeah, I agree with what you said. The game is missing content. It seems like, and the dungeons that do exist aren't great, and there's not.
Well, I mean, the dungeons are fine. It's the fact that like and it's really strong 2/3 of the game, but the last third is it's like you got the sea charts where you have to get the Triforce,
Yeah.
and that instead of the extra dungeons really kind of like they tried it, it didn't work. You know.
That's
Um,
interesting. I gotta play this game. God.
You should. I
and
mean, it's good.
the first 2/3 are great. The last third
Agreed.
isn't
Does
as
it really
great.
feel unfinished though? You get to a certain point, you're just like, what happened?
It does,
Interesting.
at least in my opinion.
I don't think I feel that way as strongly as Wombat, but I definitely see where he's coming from, and I agree that parts are like it. It's lacking at the end, kind of how Dark Souls felt. Actually, Dark Souls felt a bit more unfinished to me
It
than Wind
also,
Waker does. But
See, I kind of appreciate the way I played Dark Souls then when I got the Demon Ruins last, because at that point it was kind of like this should be wrapping up, and it was just
yeah,
right.
I'm like, wow, this really is wrapping up fast. I'm like, holy crap, this is wrapping up.
Um, the other thing is, you know that mechanic that you guys were talking about of a one and done thing for items.
hmm
It doesn't really do that in Wind Waker, but what it doesn't do in items, it does in places.
you
So
go there for one thing. Yeah,
you
good
go to
point.
you sail to an island and like there's only one thing you do on that island and then you never have to go back to that island again. Like and then there's 25 of those.
Oh, that's interesting. So, like the island traveling bit, is that kind of like similar to the Skyward Sword flying around, where it was just like it didn't really
Um,
seem
Sky
seemed pointless.
Skyward Sword's flying around was less pointless than Wind Waker. Wind Waker was at least there were some islands that you sailed to and it was faster. The biggest disappointment with Skyward Sword was how empty the overworld was. The sky was.
Yeah.
Skyloft was
So the
really empty.
overworld in the sea is not empty.
No, there's 25 islands in there.
Wow, see that's interesting.
All of varying sizes. Some like I would say half of those are small and one-shot places, and then the other half are like more more content. But yeah. Um,
I
and then
think if sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
If I was going to choose a backup game that wasn't Breath of the Wild or Ocarina of Time, because one of those I'd have to think about it more closely, which would be my second favorite. I think Twilight Princess is definitely up there. But besides the points we already mentioned, that some of the items like the spinner or the Rod of Dominion aren't super useful, I think the boss fights were ridiculously easy. Like
Hmm.
seriously, you could beat it blindfolded. They weren't hard. The bosses all look badass and sweet, but every single boss, they don't have moves that are tough to dodge. I don't know. I thought the game was exceptionally easy. I don't know what you guys thought about that, but
I felt the game was long.
mhm.
Is that the hardest part for replayability for me for Twilight Princess was the fact that it was a really long beginning. Like it was hard to get into the story.
Oh yeah, you started a stupid farm doing
It
like
takes you
goat
40.
herding.
It takes you 40 minutes.
This is a joke. Dude. It's for real though.
I forgot about that.
That's
Oh
what
my god.
happens. Now I'm
Best
mad
game.
all over
I want
again.
to change my answer. Best game. Twilight Princess.
Goat herding.
um,
God.
Twilight Princess really excelled at dungeons, and like the bosses were all unique and really cool. And
They're
the
cool.
item,
They're easy as hit. They're
they,
so
they,
easy.
yeah, but the bosses being easy or hard isn't what makes Zelda Zelda. Like, I
No,
don't.
but
It's that they're unique, cool, and different. You know what I mean?
I don't
Like,
want to see a badass like giant sized boss who gets hit in the toe 3 times and dies while he just like pisses fire all over the room. That's the second boss.
oh, you've only played Zelda Phantom Hourglass. Wow.
I
Oh,
will.
that's one game I
Oh
haven't
yeah,
played. I
you're
own it. I
missing
just
out,
got
William.
it.
You gotta play.
Yeah. Did you beat it? What did you think of it?
I've never played that one actually, so I'd be interested to see what he says.
Yeah, but back to Twilight Princess. Yeah, I get what you're saying with the easy bosses. And the story was good. There was a twist that was good too. I felt that there wasn't as much to collect, and the things that you did collect, there wasn't really much of a reward for. So
Mhm.
that made me a little salty as a collector. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, I get that.
overall, I liked the game. I like that it was like a direct correlation to Ocarina of Time,
Sure.
and things like that, and you could recognize
This
a lot from it.
the the surprise Ganon too was so good,
Yeah, that was really cool, and like
so
fighting
good.
Zelda was really neat. But
Yeah,
ultimately, yeah, there are some the intro is really weak, and then like overall, like the game felt empty. It felt like the areas were very empty in ways that Breath of the Wild fixed that problem. Like,
I didn't like
Mhm.
the controls at first. I didn't like the Wii controls at first
okay,
on
I
Twilight
played on the
Princess.
GameCube, which is actually the canon version of the game.
Oh wow.
It's you know how the orientation flips between games. You didn't know
Wait,
that,
what,
did you?
sorry, what do you mean by that?
So in GameCube, Link is left-handed.
Oh,
In,
Oh,
in the Wii, he's right-handed because the whole
I see.
game is mirrored.
right,
Right, right,
because
right. Yeah.
the
Because the Wii
most
Motion,
people are
most
right
people are
hands,
right-handed, which
right?
I thought was dumb that you couldn't like switch it to left-handed if you were left-handed.
Yeah, I don't know why
That's
they didn't
dumb.
give that a feature. I feel like that'd be pretty simple.
Yeah,
But
and then
uh,
anything that had Wii Motion controls, like Skyward Sword, Link's been right-handed, so that makes me a little salty. Like, not that I'm
yeah,
left-handed, but like poor left-handed people, and like Link's canon left-handed, so like what the hell, guys? Come on.
yeah. I didn't like it, but it grew on me, and but it annoyed me more in uh uh Skyward Sword for some reason.
Yeah, well, Skyward
It
Sword
didn't
was a
go
lot more.
away.
It had the Wii Motion Plus, so it's more touchy, and you couldn't reset the controls as easy.
Yeah, it just felt like it was like that overall sense of like disappointment when you're like, oh, I'm on controls. It didn't go away like it did for Twilight Princess.
Right, right. Oh wait. William said, I don't even remember if I beat it or not. I played it when it came out. Cool. All right.
Oh, okay. I think it's funny that we haven't really touched on LTTP a lot when that was
Well,
one of the.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
neither
like
haven't beat it.
neither Kirby or I have beaten it,
I've never beaten it either,
so
to
there
be
you go.
fair. But
Um,
That's-
replayability, I feel like that has a lot in there, and I
there's a
feel
lot.
like
I actually found it pretty difficult. I kept
yeah,
dying in the first
that's true.
dungeon. Um,
It's super difficult compared to I think like the difficulty went down with OOT because I think it was trying to hit a broader audience, and I think maybe just in the realm of 3D games they had to be more easier because it was a lot to take in compared to like the platformer type 2D games.
they also
And
recognize. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
They also recognized that it was going to be a bigger game and longer game. So like that's really why Navi chimes in every once in a while is, hey, this is where you're supposed to be going, so that you know a general sense like from one gameplay to the next what you're supposed to be doing. Because with A Link to the Past they didn't have that, and like I ended up like I didn't like I started streaming it blind and I got to a certain point and then I stopped and then I didn't pick it up for a while and now I have no fucking idea what I was doing, where I was, where I'm going next, and like I just kind of want to restart, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like that's a game where like you kind of have to take notes, and like Zelda 1 and 2 are kind of like that too. It's before they came to the fact that oh you're not probably the game's not short enough that you're gonna, and not that Link to the Past is a short game. I don't think it is. Um,
No,
but
it's not really.
but like the other two were more designed to do in like one or two sittings, like shorter games.
Mhm.
So like they kind of learned from Link to the Past for Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, I when I played the game, I saw a lot of Ocarina of Time in Link to the Past, which I really liked. Like even like there's even an ocarina in it that you can play, the Ocarina of Wind or something like that. That you can use to teleport. But like I saw a lot of elements that were in that game that they used in Ocarina of Time too. So
Mhm.
that's what I liked about it. It was that it felt familiar. I was like, okay, I like this game, but and that I've played A Link Between Worlds. I now recognize the areas too. So because Link Between Worlds it pulls from the overworld quite heavily.
Right.
So
Interesting. I'm trying to see. I'm looking at the timeline right now.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, we were talking about the timeline before we realized that I didn't have sound for mine. So
right. Yep. Yep. So the timeline where basically the start is Skyward Sword, then Minish Cap, Four
right.
Swords, and then we go to the fork in the road, which is Ocarina of Time. And then we go to, that's when it has the hero defeated or the hero successful, and the hero successful splits to the child and the adult. So
You know how I said that I was kind of disappointed that there was a third timeline, that there was a hero defeated timeline.
Mhm.
right.
Um, I've managed to convince myself that it's okay by thinking of it this way. You know how Zelda is oriented always into a trio category, like there's always three aspects:
Yeah.
the Triforce of Power, Wisdom, and Courage, and the
Mhm.
people who those are represented by. Most
Right.
of the time, like Majora's Mask, it's not like that. It's actually four. Like there's always a number theme. Um, well, in the overarching storyline, there's three timelines. There's the timeline of power where Ganon won. There's the timeline of wisdom where Zelda had the wisdom to send Link back. You know, like Zelda is in that timeline as the main person. And then there's the timeline of courage where Link is sent back and is in that timeline.
Mhm.
Right.
So like each one represents a different person who continues the timeline, whether it be Zelda, Link, or Ganon. So that's kind of how that I was like, okay, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah. I just I don't know if you guys ever saw that one, but there was like a projector screen version of Zelda that came out.
Wait. What?
What do you
Like one
mean?
of those old, like, you know, like when projector TVs first came out, and they sometimes had built-in games or
No,
you could
you gotta
download
remember I'm
games
only
on
12 years old. I'm like so young compared to you
them.
always say. So
I'm trying to. I don't see that one on the timeline. Maybe I'm
yeah.
missing it, but
Are
I
you
do
Are you
talking
thinking about
about
the
see.
Zelda
the
CDI?
CDIs? He's talking about the CDIs. Those
Are
are
you thinking
not
about
canon.
CDI?
Oh yeah, the CDIs. Okay, I see them. I see them down at the bottom.
Definitely not. Yeah,
Are they? So are they on, they're on their own separate thing.
Yeah,
they're not games. They're not
they're a
they
joke. Yeah, Nintendo doesn't even make these
they're
games.
not Zelda games.
Well, I mean, Link's crossbow training is on here.
Yeah, but that's also not part of the canon.
Oh, okay.
Let me just make sure. Oh, if you click that, are you talking about that Zelda, that dude's face, the link that looks like that?
Yes. So good, so good.
um,
That's my favorite Zelda game. I take it back.
Yep.
there's also the Hyrule Warriors game, which is also not canon.
Is it good? Have you played it, Wombat
I
or Trell?
haven't, but I'm gonna get it for the Switch because it has all of the different versions of it all together instead of
Oh
the
god.
Man.
so the 3DS and the Wii U version are together.
Okay.
So
I've never
There's
played
actually
that kind of game. Sorry, Trell.
there's actually OOT manga.
yes,
What? What
yep.
the hell's
What?
going on?
What is happening? There's so. I
There's
mean,
Skyward
I.
Sword manga too.
Wow, it's
That's
so
in the back of the
cool.
Hyrule Historia.
Hmm.
It's
So crazy.
the link before Skyward Sword.
I need to try out these other ones, to be honest, like the handheld ones. I feel like there's a lot, like I feel like a lot of the handheld ones are built off of a gimmick. Is that true?
So the best handheld one by far is Link Between Worlds. That takes the elements of Breath of the Wild, where you can tackle any dungeon you want at any point, because all the items you can rent from a shop in the middle of the game, not in the middle of the storyline, but in the middle of the map, and then you can use that item to go take on that temple,
Okay. Okay.
which is neat. And you can upgrade them and things like that. And after a while, you can actually buy them and keep them in your inventory. But like you can rent items as much as you want, as long as you have the stuff for them. You know what I mean?
So, what's the one that you actually get sucked into walls and then
That's
come out of
Link
wall?
Between Worlds.
That's
Yeah.
Link Between Worlds. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So what's Phantom Hourglass then?
That's a direct sequel to Wind Waker. It's
Oh,
a.
really?
Mhm. It's what happens after you guys sail off to find a new Hyrule, and you
And then
found it.
wait, is Phantom Tracks a sequel to that? Then he
Spirit
becomes
Tracks is
Train
a sequel to
Conductor.
that, but it's like a
That
century
was good.
later in a different Link and Zelda.
When he's a train conductor, yeah, he doesn't want to fight
Evil King
anymore.
Malladus. So Ganon's not the main bad guy for all the games.
No, sometimes it's somebody
He's
different.
not even in Majora's Mask.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I know in Majora's Mask he's definitely not, but
Skyward
it
Sword, technically he's in it, but
Mm.
Demise is actually he's the one that curses Link to have Ganon keep showing up.
Right.
it looks like the beginning of Ganon really is OOT.
Yes, Ganon. That's when Ganon is in human form. That's the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, just educating myself. This is it's so deep.
Because remember, Ganon always has the Triforce after that. Because he got it
yeah,
in
that's
Ocarina of
power,
Time.
yeah.
Just the piece though, right? Not the whole
Right.
thing.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. So
I
I do love
I have
I
not
love the
been in
aspect.
Japan.
I love the aspect that it's always like a different Link in Zelda, but the same Ganon.
Yeah, for the most part. Ganon keeps getting reincarnated because, see, at some point Ganon
Oh, you're
stopped
cutting
being
out,
human.
Wombat.
Oh, am I?
You seem okay now, but for a second there you were. Yeah.
At one point Ganon was human, but now like in he got corrupted so much that he's like more of a beast. He's not even like a human form anymore, which is why
Right.
he shows up as a pig, a human pig sort of combo in a lot of games.
So, which is why in Breath of the Wild
He's
he's
like
almost just
completely corrupted. He's like this big goo.
God
Yeah.
like. Yeah. Crazy.
So, let us know in the comments below or in one of our discords if you guys agree with us what your favorite Zelda is or not. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think we've tackled Zelda pretty heavily.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
If you guys have something that we didn't talk about in Zelda, we can always come back to it. So let us know. I'm sure someday we're gonna have a Zelda hinted at us for the future, and we'll talk about that maybe.
Ooh, hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully before the Switch is dead.
Oh, they better.
So
yeah,
There's so
I
much
want
potential on this console.
Yes.
yeah. So hopefully you'll join us next time. We'll be back in 2 weeks. What do you think our topic should be, guys?
I was gonna. After you signed off, I was like, God,
Well,
okay.
Man, what could be a good topic? Holy
So
crap.
it was PC console. It was what kind of games we are, and then it was Zelda. Trell is not far enough through Dark Souls to do a Dark Souls topic yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's gonna
man,
be a while.
That's
Yeah,
gonna be
a
like
while.
years down the road.
Slowpoke Trell refuses
We'll-
to beat Dark Souls.
We'll,
2
we'll
and
just
3.
keep hinting at it, but ultimately speaking, Trell, here's my goal for you. On our year anniversary for this podcast,
Yeah.
we're gonna do the Dark Souls stream.
Because look, we got a Dark Souls. Our background
With
is
or
Dark
without
Souls,
you.
and we can't even talk about it because one of our scholars over here refuses to get good.
So you have till next July to beat Dark Souls 2 and 3.
Next July to do 2 Dark Souls games.
It
Holy
took him almost a year to
crap.
beat Dark Souls 1, Wombat, and Dark Souls 2 is forever long.
I just need to play it consistently and stop playing other games.
No,
Dang.
don't do that though. I mean, keep your variety if you like it. You know.
Do what you
Yeah.
want, dude, but like ultimately speaking, that's my challenge to you.
Big one-shot tries.
Oh
That's what I
man.
need.
Yep.
Or like a weekend stream or two, that's all.
Go get what?
A weekend
Or
stream.
a weekend or night stream or
Weekend
something.
streams, man. Maybe might have to up the stream level. Well, I feel like I've made more progress through DS2 than I did DS1. Like I haven't really got stuck on a boss.
You have
for...
because you're better, and you'll be better again at DS3.
Oh,
We'll
man.
see. Plus, DS3 is a lot more linear in certain aspects. So
It's so much. It's so
Good,
smooth.
maybe I
Oh,
won't
it's
get
so
as
good.
lost. Dark Souls 2, you get lost so much. Oh my
yeah,
god.
Because
there's
the
a
world's massive.
yeah, it's a big world. Anyway, so let us know if there's a topic you want us to talk about. We'll come up with one. If you don't you worry. But we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys, who were in the live stream, and if you're catching this on the highlight or on YouTube, thanks for watching, and I hope
Yep.
you enjoyed.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
guys.
Yeah, thanks guys.
See ya.